It started as a quiet morning in the suburban neighborhood, where houses were neatly lined up, lawns were freshly mowed, and the streets carried the calmness that came with routine. The homeowner, someone who loved order and took pride in keeping their property in perfect condition, was sipping coffee on the porch, enjoying the light breeze. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even. Little did they know, this day would mark the beginning of a long and unexpected battle with the Homeowners Association. The first letter arrived on a typical Tuesday, slipped under the door with the usual stack of mail. At first glance, it seemed like a routine notice, something minor that would probably resolve itself quickly. But as the homeowner read through the carefully typed words, a sense of unease settled in. The letter complained about the color of the fence in the backyard. It was not a wild color, just slightly different from what the HOA guidelines suggested, but apparently enough to attract attention. The letter demanded a correction within a set period and threatened a small fine if the request was ignored. The homeowner frowned, rereading the letter to make sure they understood it correctly. It seemed so trivial, almost absurd. Initially, the homeowner decided to handle the matter calmly. They drafted a polite reply, explaining the reason for choosing the color and including pictures showing that the fence did not, in any way, disrupt the aesthetic of the neighborhood. They attached references to the HOA rules, highlighting that the selection was within reason. The response was careful, professional, and meant to resolve the matter without conflict. A few days passed with no reply, and the homeowner hoped the issue was over. But then came the next letter. This one was sharper, more insistent. It not only repeated the demand to change the fence color, but also included a fine that was now higher than the first. It hinted at further action if the homeowner did not comply. Reading it felt like a punch in the gut. The homeowner could not understand why something so minor had escalated this quickly. They wondered if the HOA had any sense of proportion, or if their own polite response had been ignored or even misinterpreted. Determined to get clarity, the homeowner called the HOA office. They expected a routine conversation, hoping to explain their side directly and reach a resolution. Instead, the call introduced them to a level of hostility they had not anticipated. The HOA representative on the line spoke in a firm tone, almost as if speaking to someone who had committed a serious wrongdoing. Every word seemed calculated to pressure and intimidate. The homeowner remained calm, asking clear questions and trying to stick to the facts. Despite the polite and reasonable approach, the representative seemed determined to escalate, rather than mediate. This was when the homeowner began keeping careful notes of every interaction. Dates, times, words spoken, letters received, and emails sent. Everything was documented in case the situation worsened. The feeling of unease grew with each passing day. Simple walks around the neighborhood, once a source of enjoyment, now carried a shadow of anxiety. What had been a peaceful life was slowly becoming tense, punctuated by the worry of unexpected letters or calls that could arrive at any moment. The homeowner began noticing subtle signs of the HOA's increased scrutiny. A neighbor mentioned that the HOA had recently inspected other properties on the same street, sometimes for minor details that seemed inconsequential. Another neighbor shared that they had also received similar letters, hinting at a pattern of aggressive enforcement. This realization was unsettling. What had started as an individual issue now seemed to reflect a larger approach by the HOA's tendency to enforce rules rigidly and without much room for dialogue, despite the mounting pressure. The homeowner tried to maintain normal routines. Mornings were still spent on the porch with coffee, evenings in the small garden behind the house, weekends with occasional walks around the community. They reminded themselves that the issue was still about a fence, a minor aesthetic concern, and that staying calm and factual was the only way forward. However, the stress was subtle but constant, creeping into thoughts, affecting sleep, and lingering during moments that had once been carefree. Then came the third letter. This one arrived in an official-looking envelope, marked urgent. The tone had shifted from polite warning to direct threat. The fine had increased yet again, and the letter stated that non-compliance could lead to additional legal measures. The homeowner read it multiple times, disbelief growing with each word. How could a fence color result in such a serious tone? They felt frustration and helplessness in equal measure. Questioning why an organization meant to support the community seemed intent on causing conflict. Feeling the situation was becoming more serious, the homeowner decided to seek advice. They reached out to a friend who had some legal experience, explaining the situation and showing the letters and notes. The friend confirmed that the homeowner had the right to question the HOA's actions, to request clarification, and to ensure that fines were properly justified. This advice brought a measure of reassurance. The homeowner realized they did not have to face the escalating conflict alone, and that there were ways to protect themselves while remaining calm and factual. Meanwhile, the neighborhood atmosphere seemed to subtly shift. Conversations with other residents revealed shared frustrations and quietly expressed sympathies. People had heard stories of the HOA taking strict measures, but few had actually experienced the intensity firsthand. The homeowner now became part of a small, informal network of neighbors who offered support and advice. It was a reminder that while the HOA seemed aggressive, the sense of community among residents remained strong. The homeowner also started preparing for possible escalation by gathering evidence and learning more about HOA rules, state laws, and homeowner rights. Every email, letter, and conversation was meticulously recorded. Photos were taken of the fence from multiple angles to demonstrate that it met guidelines. Even small details, such as the type of paint and its reflective qualities, were documented. The homeowner wanted to ensure that if the conflict escalated further, they would have a clear and organized record of everything. Despite the stress and growing frustration, the homeowner tried to maintain perspective. They knew that the HOA's actions, while intimidating, were not personal attacks, but rather an enforcement of their rules, however excessive it seemed. This understanding helped manage the emotional toll. They focused on practical steps, staying calm on calls, replying to letters in a professional tone, and avoiding confrontational language. Every day was a careful balance between standing firm and maintaining composure. One evening, while reviewing the stack of correspondence, the homeowner realized that the issue had shifted from a simple aesthetic disagreement to a matter that could have long-term consequences. Ignoring the letters was no longer an option, and complying under duress seemed equally unsatisfying. They faced a choice: continue trying to resolve the issue informally, or escalate matters by involving legal counsel or authorities who could clarify the limits of the HOA's power. It was a moment that underscored the seriousness of what had begun as a minor complaint. The first part of this story closes with the homeowner reflecting on the strange journey from peace to tension, from a quiet morning to a series of letters and calls that disrupted the rhythm of life. They understood that the battle was just beginning, and that patience, documentation, and knowledge would be their strongest allies. The stage was set for what would become a series of confrontations, careful negotiations, and a surprising twist that no one could have anticipated. The small HOA issue, once dismissed as trivial, was slowly becoming a story of resilience, strategy, and the unexpected importance of knowing one's rights. The tension in the neighborhood had grown almost imperceptibly at first, like a shadow stretching across a sunny morning. The homeowner felt it in small ways, the lingering worry in the back of the mind. The way each knock on the door made the heart beat a little faster. The hesitancy to leave the house without checking the mailbox first. What had begun as a minor disagreement about the color of a fence had now escalated into a series of interactions that felt more threatening than ever before. One afternoon, the homeowner received a phone call from the HOA office. They answered cautiously, unsure whether the conversation would be calm or confrontational. From the very first words, it was clear that the tone had shifted. The representative on the line spoke firmly, almost coldly, repeating the same complaints about the fence and emphasizing the fines that had been imposed. Each word was delivered with a hint of judgment, as if the homeowner had committed a serious violation of community rules. Despite the intimidation, the homeowner remained composed, answering clearly and sticking to the facts. As the conversation continued, the homeowner realized that the HOA representative was relying on assumptions rather than verified facts. They pointed out minor issues that did not exist, suggested violations that were not supported by the rules. and ignored the detailed explanations that had been previously submitted. The homeowner calmly refuted each point, providing evidence where necessary and maintaining a polite tone, but the representative seemed uninterested in reason. The call ended abruptly, leaving the homeowner feeling frustrated and more aware than ever of the imbalance of power. After the call, the homeowner sat down with a notebook and recorded every detail. Times, dates, words spoken, and promises made all were documented carefully. They understood that each interaction could be important if the situation escalated further. What started as a small disagreement had grown into a matter where careful documentation and strategic thinking would be crucial. The feeling of being under constant scrutiny was exhausting. Yet the homeowner remained determined to face the challenge with calmness and preparation. In the following days, more letters arrived, each one carrying a sense of urgency and escalating fines. The homeowner began to notice patterns in the communications, the same phrases, the same warnings, repeated insistently. One letter even mentioned that continued noncompliance could lead to legal action. Without clearly specifying what that action might entail, the homeowner felt a mix of disbelief and concern. How could a disagreement about a fence color possibly reach a legal threat? It was clear that the HOA was determined to push the issue, regardless of reason or fairness. Seeking advice became a priority. The homeowner reached out to a friend who had some experience in legal matters and explained the situation. They shared copies of all letters and notes, describing the repeated calls and the escalating fines. The friend carefully reviewed everything and confirmed that the homeowner had valid reasons to question the HOA's actions. The letters did not provide sufficient justification for the increasing fines, and the repeated calls could be interpreted as harassment. This advice provided a sense of validation and reassurance, reminding the homeowner that they were not alone in navigating this challenge. Despite the reassurance, the stress of the situation was difficult to ignore. The homeowner noticed that small routines had changed. Walking through the neighborhood, once a relaxing activity, now carried a subtle tension. Each interaction with neighbors or HOA representatives felt loaded with potential conflict. Even the act of checking the mailbox had become a moment of anxiety. The homeowner knew they had to maintain composure, but the emotional toll was real, weighing on them in ways that were hard to articulate. Neighbors began to offer quiet support. Sharing their own experiences with the HOA, some had faced minor fines. Others had received letters with vague threats, and a few had dealt with confrontational phone calls. These conversations were reassuring, creating a small network of shared understanding. The homeowner realized that the situation was not an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of strict enforcement that affected multiple residents. This insight provided both comfort and a strategic advantage. It meant that the homeowner could learn from others' experiences and approach the situation with greater awareness. As the days passed, the homeowner also started reviewing HOA rules in detail. They wanted to understand the precise regulations, the procedures for fines, and the rights of homeowners. Each rule was studied carefully, cross-referenced with the letters received, and compared with actual practice. The discrepancies became evident. Rules were being applied inconsistently, and procedural steps were being skipped. The homeowner took note of every irregularity, preparing a record that could be used to support their position if necessary. Knowledge became a source of empowerment, turning anxiety into proactive planning. During this period, the homeowner also encountered a particularly aggressive phone call. The representative accused them of ignoring repeated warnings and suggested that further action would be unavoidable. The tone was sharper than before, bordering on intimidation. The homeowner took a deep breath and responded calmly, refusing to engage in anger or panic. They requested specific references to the rules being cited, asked for documentation of any alleged violations, and reminded the representative of the previously submitted evidence. The call ended without resolution, but the homeowner felt a sense of victory in maintaining control and composure. In addition to documenting interactions and reviewing rules, the homeowner began preparing a more formal approach. They drafted letters responding to each communication, ensuring that each response was clear, factual, and professional. Photos were included to support claims, references to HOA guidelines were cited precisely, and dates of prior submissions were noted. The homeowner was determined to create an unassailable record, knowing that if the conflict escalated further, a strong foundation of evidence would be essential. The emotional impact of the situation was undeniable. The homeowner experienced frustration, disbelief, and occasional moments of doubt. Yet, through careful planning and deliberate calm, they managed to navigate each interaction without succumbing to anger. Friends and neighbors provided emotional support, offering perspective and encouragement. These relationships became a crucial buffer, helping the homeowner maintain resilience in the face of repeated pressure. One evening, after reviewing the stack of letters and notes, the homeowner reflected on the journey so far. What had started as a minor issue of fence color had become a prolonged engagement requiring careful thought, legal awareness, and emotional fortitude. The process had revealed the homeowner's own strengths: patience, attention to detail, and the ability to remain composed under pressure. At the same time, highlighted the importance of understanding one's rights and documenting every interaction. The story at this point was not yet resolved. The HOA continued to push, the fines continued to escalate, and the threat of legal action loomed in the background. The homeowner knew that remaining calm, organized, and informed was the only way forward. They also understood that escalation was likely, and that preparation and strategy would be key in navigating the next stages. Each day brought new letters, new calls, and new challenges, but the homeowner faced them with increasing confidence, knowing that knowledge, patience, and careful documentation could turn the tide by the end of this part of the story. It was clear that the conflict had moved beyond a simple neighborhood dispute. It had become a test of resilience, understanding, and the ability to stand firm in the face of intimidation. The homeowner's commitment to staying calm and factual had created a foundation for what was to come, setting the stage for encounters that would escalate even further, leading to unexpected developments and surprising turns. The small HOA issue, once trivial, had now transformed into a complex and challenging journey, one that demanded focus, courage, and strategic thinking at every step. The homeowner had reached a point where every call from the HOA made the heart race, and every letter slipped under the door brought a mix of anxiety and determination. They had become meticulous in tracking every interaction, and the neighborhood had become a place of quiet tension. Yet, the homeowner remained committed to handling the situation calmly and with clarity. Understanding that patience and knowledge were their strongest allies, one ordinary afternoon, the homeowner received a call that seemed at first like any other. The phone rang, displaying the familiar number of the HOA office. The homeowner picked up, bracing for another round of pressure. The voice on the other end was firm, insistent, and immediately raised the stress level. The representative repeated the usual complaints about the fence, the fines, and the supposed violations. But this call was different from the start. There was a presence in the tone, formality that suggested more than a simple enforcement action. As the conversation continued, a third voice joined the call. The homeowner initially thought it was another staff member, but soon realized the seriousness in the tone and the way the questions were framed. Calmly, the new voice introduced itself as a U.S. district judge, who was listening to the matter due to a related legal oversight. The homeowner felt an immediate shift, a mix of awe, surprise, and cautious attention. The gravity of the situation was instantly apparent. This was no longer just a neighborhood dispute. It had escalated to a level that demanded precision, honesty, and composure. The judge began asking clear, precise questions, each designed to understand the facts without bias. They inquired about the timeline of letters, the nature of the fines, and the homeowner's responses. Each question was measured, calm, and focused on uncovering the truth. The homeowner answered carefully, drawing on the detailed records they had maintained for weeks. They spoke slowly, clearly, and without emotion, sticking strictly to the facts and avoiding speculation. The judge listened attentively, occasionally asking follow-up questions to clarify details or confirm documentation. During the call, it became clear that the HOA had made significant procedural errors. Certain fines had been applied without proper notice. Deadlines had been miscalculated, and communications that were meant to be official were inconsistent. The judge gently pointed out these discrepancies, explaining the legal framework in a calm but firm way. Each point was evidence of the homeowner's correct approach, documenting every interaction, remaining calm. In following the rules meticulously, the homeowner realized the importance of staying composed. It was tempting to express frustration or recount the hours of stress caused by the HOA, but they knew that emotional reactions would not serve them. Instead, they relied on the careful notes they had kept, the photos of the fence, and the documented history of communication. The homeowner described each step logically, providing a clear picture of what had occurred without exaggeration or embellishment. The clarity and professionalism were noticed, and the tone of the conversation reflected a shift in the balance of authority. Meanwhile, the HOA representative on the line began to show signs of unease. The initial confidence and insistence gave way to pauses, vague responses, and attempts to justify actions that were clearly flawed. The presence of the judge had changed the dynamics completely. The homeowner observed the subtle shift but remained focused on answering questions accurately and fully. They knew that any misstep could weaken their position, and they were determined to maintain control through calm, factual communication. Throughout the call, the judge provided gentle guidance, reminding all parties of the importance of due process, transparency, and fairness. It was evident that the HOA's methods had crossed a line, not through any personal bias, but through procedural mistakes and overreach. The homeowner felt a quiet reassurance, recognizing that the law and documented rights were on their side. For the first time in weeks, the situation felt like it was moving toward resolution rather than ongoing stress. After an hour of careful questioning, the judge summarized the main points. The fines that had been improperly applied were noted. Discrepancies in procedure were highlighted. Clear instructions were given to the HOA about the necessary corrective actions. The judge emphasized that all future communication must follow legal guidelines and that homeowners had the right to clarity, fairness, and proper notice. The tone was firm but not threatening, leaving no ambiguity about what was expected. The homeowner listened carefully, taking mental notes, and preparing to implement the guidance in subsequent interactions. Once the call ended, homeowner felt a mix of relief and reflection. The presence of a U.S. district judge had transformed the situation. What had seemed like an impossible struggle against an inflexible HOA now had a clear path forward. The homeowner realized that staying composed, documenting interactions, and understanding rights had been critical in reaching this point. The experience reinforced the value of careful preparation, patience, strategic thinking. In the days following the call, the homeowner noticed immediate changes. The tone of HOA communications shifted subtly. Letters were more formal, deadlines were clearly stated, and the threats of further fines became less aggressive. The homeowner's careful documentation and the judge's intervention had clearly signaled that the situation was now under scrutiny and that any further overreach would not be tolerated. There was still work to be done, but the trajectory of the conflict had changed. The homeowner felt more confident in handling each interaction with calm authority. Neighbors, hearing about the unusual call, expressed surprise and admiration. The homeowner's story spread quietly through the community, highlighting the importance of knowing one's rights and standing firm in the face of intimidation. Conversations shifted from casual complaints about fines to discussions about proper procedure, documentation, and the potential for legal oversight. The homeowner became an example of measured resilience, showing that knowledge and composure could turn the tide even in seemingly unfair situations. Reflecting on the experience, the homeowner realized that the call with the judge had not only addressed immediate issues, but also provided long-term lessons. The importance of careful documentation, clear communication, and calm responses had been reinforced. They understood that conflicts, even over minor matters, could escalate rapidly if procedural mistakes or overreach were involved. The experience underscored the need for preparation, strategic thinking, and the courage to stand firm when faced with intimidation. The homeowner also recognized a subtle shift in personal confidence. Weeks of stress, careful planning, and strategic responses had strengthened resilience and the ability to navigate complex situations. There was a newfound assurance that challenges, no matter how small they seemed initially, could be addressed effectively when approached with knowledge, patience, and calm authority. The experience was transforming not just the resolution of the HOA dispute, but the homeowner's approach to challenges in life more broadly as the neighborhood settled into its usual rhythm. The homeowner continued to maintain vigilance. Every letter and call was still reviewed carefully, every response documented, and each interaction approached with calm clarity. However, the looming threat of uncontrolled fines and intimidation had been replaced by a sense of procedural order. The homeowner felt empowered, no longer merely a resident subject to arbitrary decisions, but someone who had successfully navigated a complex and intimidating situation with composure and strategic action. The story, at this point, had reached a turning point. What began as a simple dispute over a fence color had escalated into a scenario involving federal oversight, legal guidance, and procedural correction. The homeowner's commitment to maintaining composure, documenting every detail, and understanding the legal framework had been rewarded. The path forward was clearer, and the homeowner could approach subsequent interactions with confidence, knowing that fairness, patience, and preparation were on their side. This part of the story closed with the homeowner reflecting on the power of calm, knowledge, and strategic action. They understood that patience and preparation could turn even the most stressful disputes into manageable situations. The call with the judge had not only provided immediate resolution to procedural errors, but it also reinforced critical life lessons about resilience, documentation, and the importance of standing firm in the face of intimidation. The journey was far from over, but the homeowner now faced it with renewed confidence and clarity. After the call with the judge, a noticeable shift occurred in the dynamics of the conflict. Although the homeowner knew that vigilance was still necessary, the HOA, now aware that higher authority had been involved, had to adjust its approach. While letters and calls continued, the tone changed from aggressive and threatening to cautious and formal. The homeowner continued documenting everything meticulously, knowing that every action, every response, and every letter could be relevant in the days ahead. The first few communications after the call were polite but still demanding. The HOA requested clarifications on certain issues, set deadlines for responses, and even suggested that inspections might be conducted to verify compliance. However, the heavy-handed threats that had once characterized the HOA's communications were gone. The homeowner carefully read each letter, responded in a professional and calm manner, and maintained detailed notes. Photos, dates, and references to HOA rules were included in every correspondence, ensuring that the homeowner's position remained well-supported in parallel. The homeowner began to see subtle signs of change within the neighborhood community. Other residents who had also experienced aggressive HOA behavior reached out quietly, sharing stories and strategies for managing communications. These interactions provided not only emotional support, but also practical advice. Neighbors discussed their own documentation practices, suggested ways to respond to letters, and reminded each other of the importance of staying calm in every interaction. The homeowner realized that while the HOA could create tension, the sense of community and shared understanding among neighbors was still strong. The homeowner also continued to research the legal aspects of HOA authority. They carefully reviewed state housing laws, HOA bylaws, and federal guidelines to ensure that every response was grounded in documented rights. This research became a source of empowerment, turning what could have been a purely stressful situation into an opportunity to learn and apply knowledge. Understanding the limits of HOA authority and the procedures required for fines and enforcement strengthened the homeowner's confidence and ability to navigate future interactions. One day, the HOA sent a letter indicating that an inspection would take place on the property to verify compliance with the rules. The homeowner prepared thoroughly, ensuring that the property met all requirements and that any documentation needed for the inspection was readily available. When the inspection occurred, it was clear that the HOA inspector was following the proper protocol, and the homeowner politely answered questions, provided requested documents, and maintained composure throughout. The inspection went smoothly, and no violations were found, demonstrating that the homeowner had been compliant all along. Following the inspection, the HOA began to communicate more cautiously. They requested clarifications, sought documentation, and confirmed deadlines, but did so without the aggressive tone that had defined prior interactions. The homeowner responded, promptly maintaining a professional tone, providing clear evidence, and keeping careful records. Each response further solidified the homeowner's position, leaving little room for arbitrary fines or intimidation. During this period, the homeowner reflected on the emotional journey. Weeks of stress, anxiety, and uncertainty had taken a toll. Yet they had managed to navigate the situation with resilience. The call with the judge had been a turning point, showing the homeowner the importance of remaining calm, documenting everything, and understanding one's rights. Each subsequent interaction reinforced these lessons, creating a pattern of strategic, measured responses that gradually shifted the balance of power. The homeowner also recognized the importance of maintaining personal balance. Daily routines, morning coffee on the porch, evening walks, time spent in the garden, became anchors that helped manage stress. Conversations with neighbors provided emotional support and perspective, reminding the homeowner that the situation, while challenging, was not insurmountable. By combining practical preparation with personal well-being, a homeowner could approach each interaction with clarity and composure. As the HOA adjusted its behavior, the homeowner began to feel a sense of quiet victory. The fines that had been improperly applied were not enforced, and the threats of further legal action diminished. The homeowner's careful documentation and strategic responses had effectively curbed the aggressive tactics of the HOA. This outcome reinforced the lesson that knowledge, patience, and calm authority could create meaningful change, even when facing an organization that initially appeared inflexible. The neighborhood itself seemed to notice the change. Conversations among residents shifted from complaints and frustrations to shared stories of procedural fairness and empowerment. The homeowner's experience became an example of resilience and strategic action, showing others that standing firm, documenting interactions, and understanding rights could lead to positive outcomes. The homeowner quietly felt a sense of contribution, knowing that their approach might help others in the community navigate similar challenges. Despite the progress, the homeowner remained vigilant. Letters continued to arrive, and occasional calls were still necessary. Each interaction was approached with the same calm and careful attention as before. The homeowner had learned that complacency could undo progress, and that every response needed to be consistent, factual, and well-documented. This ongoing commitment ensured that the HOA could not revert to aggressive tactics without consequence. The homeowner also reflected on the broader lessons of the experience. What had begun as a minor issue disagreement over a fence color had escalated into a complex situation requiring careful documentation, legal awareness, and emotional resilience. The experience highlighted the importance of standing firm, maintaining composure, and using knowledge strategically. It also demonstrated the power of community support, as neighbors sharing experiences and strategies created a network of strength and insight. By the end of this part of the story, it was clear that the homeowner had successfully navigated the turning point in the conflict. The HOA's behavior had shifted from aggressive and threatening to formal and procedural. The fines and threats that had caused so much stress were no longer a source of fear, and the homeowner had established a position of calm authority and strategic control. The call with the judge had been pivotal, and the homeowner's consistent, professional responses had ensured that the situation moved toward fairness and resolution. Looking forward, the homeowner understood that continued vigilance was necessary. Each letter, call, and interaction would need careful attention, but the foundation had been laid for ongoing success. The experience had strengthened resilience, provided practical knowledge to reinforce the value of composure under pressure. The homeowner felt confident that, armed with documentation, knowledge, and strategic thinking, they could handle whatever the HOA might attempt in the future. This part of the story closed with the homeowner reflecting on the importance of preparation, patience, and calm authority. The journey from a simple dispute to a high-stakes interaction had taught lessons about resilience, legal awareness, and the power of measured responses. The homeowner had transformed a stressful situation into an opportunity for growth and empowerment, establishing a strong position that would guide the next steps in resolving the conflict fully and confidently. The final part of the conflict unfolded with a quiet intensity. The homeowner had spent weeks documenting every interaction, responding to each letter carefully, and maintaining composure in the face of repeated pressure. The journey had been exhausting, filled with moments of doubt and stress, but also moments of clarity and empowerment. Now, with the HOA's behavior tempered and the lessons of the call with the judge still fresh, the homeowner was ready to see the situation through to a full resolution. It began with a letter that arrived one morning, clearly marked as official and requiring acknowledgement. The homeowner opened it carefully, expecting the usual formal tone, and found something entirely different. The letter stated that the fines imposed were now officially rescinded, that the previous threats of further legal action were nullified, and that the HOA acknowledged procedural errors in the handling of the dispute. It was a formal confirmation that the issue had been resolved in the homeowner's favor. Relief washed over them, a feeling that had been elusive for weeks. After the letter, the homeowner took a moment to breathe deeply and reflect on the journey so far. Despite the resolution, the homeowner knew that the experience would have lasting effects. The stress of weeks spent monitoring letters, making careful phone calls, and preparing documentation had been intense. Yet the homeowner also recognized how much they had learned about legal rights, about the importance of calm and precise communication, and about the value of patience and preparation in navigating difficult situations. The conflict had transformed into a practical lesson in resilience and strategic thinking. Neighbors, too, began to notice the change. Conversations that had once revolved around fear of fines and the unpredictability of the HOA shifted to discussions about empowerment and proper procedure. The homeowner's experience became an example of standing firm while remaining composed. People in the neighborhood expressed admiration and curiosity, asking questions about how the homeowner had managed to navigate the process. It was a subtle but meaningful recognition that knowledge, patience, and calm authority could influence outcomes even in stressful and intimidating situations. The homeowner took time to organize the documentation accumulated over the weeks. Every letter, photo, call, note, and reference to rules was carefully filed. The records would remain a resource for future reference and a guide for neighbors who might face similar challenges. The act of organizing these materials provided a sense of closure and control, reinforcing the homeowner's sense of accomplishment. What had once felt overwhelming now seemed manageable, a testament to careful planning and methodical action. Emotionally, the homeowner felt a sense of closure, but also a quiet pride. The weeks of anxiety and vigilance had not been in vain. Each moment of careful preparation, each calm response, and each meticulously documented interaction had contributed to the ultimate resolution. The homeowner recognized that resilience was not just about enduring stress, but about applying knowledge strategically, maintaining composure, and responding thoughtfully to each challenge. The experience had strengthened not only practical skills, but also inner confidence. In the days following the resolution, the homeowner began to reestablish routines that had been disrupted by the ongoing conflict. Morning coffee on the porch regained its peacefulness. Evening walks in the neighborhood returned to being relaxing. And time in the garden once again felt restorative. Each routine reinforced the sense that life was returning to normal, even as the lessons of the conflict remained in memory. The homeowner reflected on how small daily habits could serve as anchors during times of stress, providing stability and calm when external pressures were high. The HOA, now aware of the homeowner's careful approach and the legal oversight involved, maintained a professional and cautious stance in all subsequent interactions. Letters and requests were processed formally, deadlines were clear, and communications adhered to proper procedural standards. The homeowner remained vigilant, but no longer felt the constant fear and tension that had characterized the early stages of the conflict. The balance of power had shifted and fairness had been restored through preparation, calm authority, and strategic engagement. Reflecting on the overall journey, The homeowner recognized several key lessons. First, knowledge is power. Understanding HOA rules, state laws, and the proper procedures for fines and enforcement allowed the homeowner to respond effectively and strategically. Second, documentation is essential. Every letter, photo, and note became evidence that supported the homeowner's position and ensured fairness. Third, composure matters. Remaining calm, factual, and professional in interactions prevented escalation and demonstrated credibility. Finally, community support is invaluable. Sharing experiences, advice, and encouragement with neighbors provided both emotional reassurance and practical insight. The homeowner also realized that personal growth had occurred alongside the resolution of the conflict. Patience, strategic thinking, and resilience had all been strengthened through the process. The experience demonstrated that challenges, no matter how minor they seem initially, can reveal strengths and skills that are not immediately apparent. The homeowner felt prepared to face future challenges with greater confidence and understanding. Recognizing that careful preparation, calm authority, and knowledge could create meaningful outcomes, neighbors continued to engage with the homeowner, seeking guidance and sharing their own experiences. The homeowner, now seen as an example of effective problem-solving and resilience, provided advice on documentation, communication strategies, and maintaining composure. These interactions reinforced a sense of community and mutual support, showing that even in the face of intimidation or conflict, collaboration and knowledge sharing can lead to positive outcomes. Looking back, the homeowner could see the entire journey as a transformation. What had started as a minor dispute over a fence color escalated into a situation involving legal oversight, detailed documentation, and strategic interaction. Yet, through patience, knowledge, and calm authority, the homeowner successfully navigated the conflict and achieved a fair outcome. The experience highlighted the importance of understanding rights, maintaining composure, and responding strategically to challenges. In the final analysis, the homeowner felt a sense of empowerment. The HOA issue, once a source of stress and uncertainty, had become a demonstration of resilience, strategic thinking, and the effectiveness of measured, informed action. The homeowner had faced intimidation and procedural errors, but through careful documentation, calm responses, understanding of legal frameworks, the situation was resolved fairly and professionally. The journey was exhausting, but rewarding, reinforcing that even the most stressful conflicts could be managed successfully with preparation, patience, and clarity. The story closed with the homeowner reflecting on the lessons learned and the sense of personal growth that had emerged. The small issue that had sparked weeks of tension had ultimately become a story of empowerment, resilience, and community support. The homeowner had navigated the challenge with calm authority, strategic action, and meticulous preparation, demonstrating that knowledge, patience, and composure can turn even difficult situations into opportunities for growth and positive resolution. The neighborhood returned to normal, but the homeowner's experience remained a quiet example of how fairness and perseverance can prevail, even in the face of intimidation and procedural mistakes.